Hey there, it's Vickie Howell here for Yarnspirations.com, and we are ready to start on bag number 2 of our summer beach bag stitch along. And I really love this one. It's called the Poolside Tote, and I have chosen some really just great neutral colors. We've got kind of a flecky neutral and then a black. I'm going to show you how to break down this pattern by really just going over the basics of what you need to know to make the entire bag. So that will mean really just a few skills. And I'm going to start by just mentioning that I love working in lace work, which is what we're going to be doing, or whenever I'm using a chart or really anything that has many rounds of repeats, I like to use a chart marker like this. And the cool thing about this pattern is that yes, it's 10 round repeat, but really you're doing almost the same thing for half the rounds and then the same thing for the second half. Very, very similar, just at different intervals. So it looks really complicated, but it's not. I'm going to be working on a smaller piece because it's easier on camera. So please pay no mind to if I have a different stitch count than you. So first you start with contrast B, for me that's black, and you are going to cast on the amount that's called for in the pattern, and you're going to work for the length that is called for in the pattern, and this creates your base. Once you're finished though, you will not cast off or bind off. You will leave it and you will mark the center stitch with a kind of removable marker. Again, you will have 11 stitches. I have less here because I'm making a smaller piece. So the next step to this is we're going to add the main color, contrast A, and also switch needles. I should mention that we started doing this on a size US 5, 3.75 millimeter set of needles, and that will create a really sturdy base, tighter stitches. But for the lace work, we want to work with a larger size 7, 4.5 millimeters, and also they're circular needles because we're going to go from working straight and now we're going to the round. So for this particular pattern, we're required to start at the marked stitch. So you could place those on hold if you wanted. I really think it's probably the easiest just to slip them. And unless they tell you to otherwise in a pattern, you generally slip purlwise, which is inserting the tip through the front and sliding off. Okay, so now we're at our marked stitch. And it's time to join in that second color. All right, and the first round of the pattern requires you to pick up stitches. However, first you knit knit the live stitches. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and just straight up knit these. That joins the color. But from here on, I can now ditch my straight needle. I'll work only with my circular needle. I'm going to join in the round. So to do that, I have to pick up alongside the edge of it. When I'm working in garter, I always suggest picking up between the ridge. It's a little harder to see in this black, but in garter stitch you get a rib every 2 rows, a knit and a purl, or excuse me, a knit and a knit row on either side creates these little ridges that you can kind of see. And I highly suggest picking up your stitches in between each of those. And to pick them up, and again, you will pick up the amount that is called for in the pattern. So just make sure you space that out easily. You insert the needle in between that ridge, yarn over, pull through. I'll show you one more time. Yarn over, pull through. So this is going to end up being the bottom side, the public side of your bag bottom. And you can see on the inside that'll kind of almost look like it's sewn on. You'll see the bottom side of the stitches, so it's a little bit prettier on this side. So you're going to continue that all the way into the round, and then you're going to join the round. Once you join the round, it's good to work, or you're ready to work on the pattern. I've already worked 1 stitch pattern's worth, so all 10 rounds of the stitch pattern, just so you could see what it would look like. But what we should note right here is that it's important to mark the first stitch. I like these removable ones. Any kind will work, the kind that I had just a second ago. As long as you can open them, a safety pin will work, because we're working with decreases here. As you can see, the stitch pattern changes a bit, and so you want to be able to move it up every round, or every several rounds. All right, so you've joined, and you can see already the pattern has formed after I've worked 10 rounds. I'm not going to show you all 10 rounds. What I do want to show you is how we get these cool opposite slants. So the holes that you're seeing, what makes this actually lace work, is yarn overs. That's it. That's all you need to know for that. So lace is a series of increases with decreases, yarn over increases. I'm also going to show you the first round, which has the knit 2 together, and that is a right slanting decrease. Then I'm going to move ahead and show you, I believe it's the 6th round, which is where the left slanting decreases start, and that's the SSK, or the slip slip knit. They alternate those so that you get this really cool sort of almost braided looking pattern. All right, so let's go ahead and start on round 1. Move my handy dandy directions. I don't want those to be distracting. Let me move those out of the way. Okay, so we've got our marker. This is our first stitch. It's saying to knit 4. Knit 2 together. Knit 1, yarn over. That's the repeat that you'll do all the way around until you get to the last 3 stitches, and then you'll knit. But I'm going to show you a repeat one more time. So we're going to knit 4, knit 2 together. Again, this is a right slanting decrease, meaning the stitches are going to go that way once they're knit together. Knit 1, yarn over. And you're going to continue in that manner as the pattern calls for until the last 3 stitches knit 3. Okay, I'm going to move along. You'll finish on the rows, and as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and move this. It's the same stitches just repeated for the next 5 rounds. So you can see all you need to know is how to knit 2 together and yarn over, and you're just doing that in between different intervals of just plain knit stitches. So now let's talk left slanting decreases. Okay, now we've completed rounds 1 through 5. I showed you how to do the right slanting decrease that you need for all of those rounds. And now I'm going to show you how to do the left slanting decrease that you need for the 6th through 10th rounds. So we're at the beginning of the round. We see that because we've got our handy dandy little stitch marker. And we are ready to, as the pattern calls for, knit 3. That's only at the beginning of the row that you're going to knit 3. The repeat is, from now on, yarn over, knit 1, and this is our left slanting decrease. It's an SSK, which means slip, slip, and then knit through the back loop, which means you dip this left hand needle in through the front of the stitch, and you wrap the yarn around the right hand needle, pulling it through, and you've knit them together. And so that means that it's going to be slanting left. Now, you're going to continue going in that manner, but I wanted to mention one other thing. So you yarn over, knit one. It's time to SSK again. So earlier I said, unless it says otherwise, that when you slip stitches, you slip them purlwise. Well, in the abbreviations and anytime you do a SSK, it actually asks you to slip the stitches knitwise. So slip, so that means you insert the needle as if to knit, slip. The reason why you're doing this is because now we're knitting through the back loop. So if we were to knit any other way, well, you couldn't A, but B, the stitches would be twisted. So we want to, we're knitting through the back loop, which will get them oriented back in the proper way so that you can see the slant up here. And then you're just going to continue in that manner. Yarn over, knit one. That was not pretty. Knit one, and then SSK all the way around as the pattern calls for. And then for the rest of the rounds, much like I mentioned in the beginning, you're just going to be doing the same thing but at different intervals. And those 10 rows will create the pattern, and you can really see it forming. So you're just going to go for as long as the pattern calls for, or really as high as you want the bag, or about, you know, an inch and a half shorter than you want the bag, because there is also a brim. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is how to do our bind off. So for the band, the top band of this particular bag, you're going to join color B, get rid of color A. There, the pattern calls for some decreasing just to sort of even out the gauge. But then you're going to be working in garter stitch for a bit. Now, again, I'm working on a swatch size, so you would go for several more rounds than I have. But I did want to note that garter stitch is different up here, worked differently up here than it was on our base. Remember, our base was worked on straight needles, flat, which meant knitting every row. Garter stitch in the round is created by knitting one row and then purling the next. So we've done that, and we've ended up on a knit row. We want the next round to be a purl bump, but it's also the bind off round. So to create that, we have to bind off purlwise. So to do that, all we have to do is purl a stitch, purl a second stitch, kind of move our yarn to the back just because it makes it easier, and drop that second stitch over the first one. We're going to move the yarn back forward to purl again. Purl stitch, move the yarn to the back, drop off. Let me show you one last time. Purl the stitch, and then drop it off. And you'll continue all the way around, and let me see if you can see on the black, but you get that purl bump all the way to the end. Okay, the last thing worth mentioning but not showing, that I'm not going to show rather, is the handles. Super simple. You're going to cast on the amount of stitches called for in your color B. It's 92 stitches for what that's worth. You're going to just knit straight for 16 rows, fold them in half. You'll actually seam them. You can just whip stitch them. It'll be the underside, or you could mattress stitch, whatever makes your heart happy. And then you'll just sew them on. And that is it. This is such a beautiful bag, and it's a great size to use. I would actually even use it as a purse if I lined it. And it's going to be I'm actually headed off to the pool as soon as I'm done here. So I'm going to be taking this one filled with snacks and maybe a towel and some reading material. All right, enjoy. Happy knitting.